It's Monday, December the 27th, and we're filming the recap for the handicapping challenge between Mike Welsh of the Daily Racing Form and myself over the Tropical at Calder Meet. Yes, I have a scarf on because it's in the upper 30s, low 40s here in Florida. It's a real cold snap, and I want to thank my videographer, Mr. Bradley Van Peltenheimer, better known as my son Brad, for being out in the cold and filming me today. Last week at Calder, I was 7 for 27. I made $6 on $2 bets, which that's good. I wanted to build onto my totals. Mike Welsh had an excellent week. In fact, on Wednesday, he had 5 winners and profited over $45. So those brought his numbers up significantly. For the week, he was up $44. So overall, now that we've gone through 33 days, this is how it stands. My totals were: I had 301 selections with 81 winners, and Mike had 256 selections with 63 winners. I've made Mike's winning percentage at 24.6%, almost a quarter of the time he was right. He had a net loss of $118.90, and for every $2 that he bet, he got a return on average of $1.54. In comparison, my numbers were: I had a 26.9% winning percentage, I lost $5, and I had a return on investment for every $2 bet of $1.98. And remember, in comparing these two numbers, that's with both of us selecting on every single race on the card. So to almost break even at $1.98, that's pretty good. To look more closely at how we compared, money standpoint, I was $113.90 ahead of Mike, and on an ROI, I had $1.98 to his $1.54. So I was over 40 cents higher than he was. Even more impressive, I think, is if you take a look at the races where I invested my own money. So let's take a look at my final betting totals. My final betting totals were: I had 230 selections, I had 87 winners, I bet $460 on $2 bets. I got a return of $560.90, that's over $100 profit, a 37.8 winning percentage, and an ROI of $2.44. Remember, if you get $1.93 or higher, you're outperforming over 95% of the handicappers that you're betting against. It's also interesting that if you throw in my simulcast selections with my Calder selections, all of them, I came out 202 for my ROI, so I did even better when you took into account my simulcast. Let's take a look at where my selections stand now since 2005. Since 2005, including this fall 2010 season, I bet on 7,330 races. Wow, that's a lot of races. I've won 2,550 times, a lot of cashes. That comes out to a winning percentage of 34.7%. I get an average return on my winners of over $6. It's now $6.17. And my ROI over 7,330 races is $2.03. So for every $2 I bet over the last 6 years, I come out ahead. What's even more interesting is if you look at the last 4 racing seasons. In the fall of 2009, my ROI was $2.09. Then last winter at Gulfstream, I was $1.91, which was still good. Then last summer, I was $2.01, so again, I was over $2. And then this fall, I was over $2 at $2.44. So 3 of the last 4 racing seasons, I've come out ahead on ROI. That leaves us with Gulfstream. I've never been able to win the winter season. I've always finished close, like $1.80 or $1.90. So I'm very much looking forward to the racing season at Gulfstream that opens up next week. And one last thing, let's take a look back at 2010 in review, in specific the Breeders' Cup. I watched the 2010 review on HRTV, and one of the things that I thought was interesting was their comments about this year's Breeders' Cup.
With all due respect to day one of the Breeders' Cup, and I do mean with all due respect, Day 2 absolutely stole the show. In fact, the action was so good on Day 2 of the 2010 Breeders' Cup, many who wrote about it declared it the best Breeders' Cup.
I also thought it was one of the best Breeders' Cups ever, as I've seen them all. And in particular, I thought it was one of the greatest Breeders' Cup classics. And their comments were,
the greatest race in the history of the Breeders' Cup. I mean, you might be able to say the first classic at Hollywood Park, 1984, Wild Again, we might into the ridiculous.
I have to tell you, one of my favorites, and I don't think most people would disagree with this, the first time that two Derby winners met in the Classic, Ali Sheba and Ferdinand, and it came down to the shadow of the wire, somehow this topped it because of the storylines coming in and what was on the line.
I think it still goes down as one of the best, if not the best, Breeders' Cup.
so as you can see, even the experts say that was one of the best Breeders' Cups ever, one of the best Breeders' Cup classics ever. I was there and actually beat the Breeders' Cup and all the national handicappers on that day. And finally, a couple last comments on Horse of the Year. It continues to be a hot debate. I honestly don't see how Zenyatta can't be Horse of the Year for all the things she did for the racing industry. But that'll be in mid-January when the Eclipse Awards are held in Miami. By then we'll be well into the Gulfstream racing season. So we'll see you again over the winter.